very much, Sheriff Spurlock, for being on the show to talk about Erpo. Very important for our community to better understand what that is, how it can be used. When should a person report someone under the red flag law?
That is very subjective. The Colorado ERPO law, red flag, is really designed for extreme risk, and that's why it's called an extreme risk protection order. And that is really designed towards individuals who are having an extreme mental health issue. The way that we describe it is that there might be an individual who has, over a period of time, suffered from some form of mental health disorder. And we always like to preface the fact that having a mental health disorder is not a crime. It is an illness, but often in cases where there is an extreme mental health disorder, an event or a breakdown, often these individuals become a danger to themselves or others. And so I've always said, when a family member or a friend knows the individual's life, they know him way better than anyone else does, him or her. And when they see this individual spiraling out of control or whatever, when they see the individual in this extreme pattern and they can't control that individual and provide protection for that individual, that's when we always say that's when you want to reach out for help. And that's when you want to talk to the professionals. You might want to call a mental health facility and try to get them admitted for treatment. Where the ERPO comes into place is often people who have this mental health disorder over a long period of time. These individuals might find themselves in a danger to themselves or others, and you would want to protect them from either guns that they already own and possess, or from purchasing additional guns or a new gun and using that gun in a manner that would cause danger to someone or the individual. And so it's not as simple as one might think. Because mental health disorders can be very fluid, and often people manage their disorders very well, and they have a treatment program. But then those who are in this extreme risk, which we have seen historically, where tragedies have occurred, where the ability to intervene, the likelihood of saving one's life is at a very high percentage level.
Who can call or who can report it?
So who can call is obviously family members, a spouse, a partner, someone who resides with them can call law enforcement, as can law enforcement themselves intervene if they have any information that any of those mental health disorders are presently being displayed, and that the individuals might think that they're a danger to themselves or others.
There's probably several steps to go through in order to make this happen.
Okay. There are. In Colorado's process, what would happen is an individual would file the petition. They're considered petitioners because it's a civil remedy. They could file a petition to the court, and then the court can then order the ERPO once they have testimony. What we encourage here in Colorado, although that you can still do that, what we encourage in Colorado is to have the petitioner or someone who is familiar with them notify law enforcement, have law enforcement be involved in the investigation, so we can gather as much information, how many times the individual's been involved in some kind of a mental health crisis, if there's been any threats, use of weapons, or any of those kinds of things. And then what happens is, let's just say law enforcement gets that. Law enforcement completes an affidavit. It's much like a search warrant. And so they will complete an affidavit. That will go to the court. The court will review it. The court can order at that point if there's probable cause to believe that this occurs. And it's important where a lot of people they start to measuring probable cause on a criminal case and what is in a civil litigation. Those are two little bit different, okay, particularly here in Colorado. And so the court could issue that, and then what would happen is law enforcement would then serve that protection order. It is a restraining order, and you serve the restraining order on the person. And what we encourage is that when we do that, that person is then either voluntarily admits himself into some mental health facility, because usually when we get these, the individual is still very in a high risk position. The officers then work with that person or a family member or someone who is close to them to relinquish their weapons. We have a variety of ways to do it here. Law enforcement can take them. They can assign them over to a member of their family that accepts those weapons. And there's some regulations that require them that they can't just give them back to the person, or they can go to a safe storage facility. Some company might be contracting to say, we'll take those weapons and we'll save them safely.
Oh, so it's not really like confiscating them.
It is not confiscating them.
Okay.
It's temporarily taking them for a maximum of 364 days. And within a very short period of time, within inside 7 to 10 days, there's a hearing, and the judge then hears from the respondent's counsel, from the petitioner, and has all the information. And usually within inside of that time frame, the individual may or may not have been seen by a physician and or at some kind of clinic facility that would evaluate them. And then the judge makes a determination, should there be some more time, should the individual seek more treatment. And then the judge at that point can order the ERPO, and it is good for 364 days. Mm-hmm. At any time after that, on one more occasion, the respondent can request another hearing. And now, what we have seen in Colorado, because this is a new law in Colorado, what we have seen is, and at least particularly in my cases, where the individuals immediately go out and seek treatment and therapy and realize it's probably not a good idea for them to have their guns because of their condition. And so they relinquish those weapons, and they can do that a number of ways. And although the restraining order is still in place, we no longer have possession of the weapons. They can sell them, they can relinquish them to a family member. Sometimes an individual can get treatment and can petition the court, and a doctor can come in and say, yes, that person's been treated. This is what's going on. This is where we're at. I feel that they're safe. They're no longer a danger to themselves or others. And then,
within the 360-day time frame.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And then the court can order at that point a return of their property. Now, I have not seen that so far. There may have been a case in Colorado, but I don't believe so. I have not seen that because it is really rarely used, and it is used for extreme risk issues. Now, we've used them on individuals who have been, incredibly ill, very high risk of danger to themselves or others, and often with extreme mental health disorders. If there is an act of violence, there is usually a suicide or a suicide attempt that follows. That's tragic for everyone involved. And so I can safely say that the ones that we're involved with, we know they're successful because those individuals have not committed any crimes that they may or may not have been able to control. They're all alive, so there was no suicide, and they are working with their own mental health treatment for care and treatment. So that is working as a success.
You're feeling that Erpo was working?
I believe Erpo is working, yes.
How many have you worked on?
So we have done 4 here in my county. I think there's 100 and some in the state of Colorado. I'm familiar with some of those, but the 4 that we're familiar with, they're, again, like I said, everyone is well, everyone is in treatment, and they're still alive today.
To review, when a person wants to file this, it could be a family member, someone who lives with them, or someone who used to live with them. Is that right?
Yeah, it kind of falls within inside that domestic relations category. Mm-hmm. If you were a husband and wife and you got separated and you got divorced or whatever, that person could still do it. But it's important for everyone to know that you just can't arbitrarily come up and say, oh, this person's really mentally ill and they should have guns. Well, you need to prove that statement. And when was the last time I talked to him? 7 months ago. Well, that's not extreme, and that's not at risk.
And that's not enough evidence.
And that's not enough evidence. No, it's not. And so the allegations that this is going to be abused by disgruntled divorcee parties or an ex-girlfriend or whatever, it's not happening because there are benchmarks that have to be met, and the courts are the guardian of those benchmarks, and the courts are what our country trusts. And the courts are what we believe in, a rule of law in this country. And so it's working. And we had a case in Larimer County where an individual tried to file the ERPO against a police officer because that police officer actually did shoot and kill a member of their family in a self-defense officer-involved shooting. And the court immediately says, well, that's not emergency risk protection order. That was a lawful action. It was a self-defense action. And although you might be mad at that person, that's not the use for this. And it was not ordered, and it was removed.
So it sounds like there's several gatekeepers. The police, if you file it directly with the police, or you can file it directly at the courts, or both. Is that right?
Yeah. So there are some gatekeepers. There's some key points when things would change. And so obviously law enforcement has to believe that this person is a risk. And then the court has to agree that that person is a risk. And then they have another hearing that all parties are in the room, and the court will make a determination. Yes, I think not only at that time, but currently right now, you're still at risk.
In terms of any kind of evidence that needs to be brought forth, what if the person has never really been diagnosed as having a mental illness?
That happens.
Okay.
And part of the evidence is, and I can give you a scenario where an individual has never been diagnosed, but the individual is known by the family members to be either, as they're describing it themselves, as manic or depressive. Often maybe some people don't know the actual definitions of those, but they're using those because they're common terms that people throw out. But it's their behavior with the gun, threatening other people, threatening themselves, paranoid. And often what we see is that the family members call law enforcement. We go out there, we assess it, and the individual may not rise to that level. So there is a pattern of behavior that happens. And then the law enforcement would say, listen, we've been out there 6 times. Every time we've even M1'd you before, which is a mental health hold, and you go to the hospital. And I'm the first to say that the Colorado Mental Health the M1 is broken. And we try to get the legislators to fix that as well. It's broken because of the healthcare system is not designed to do that kind of work in emergency rooms. And so the individual might go to a hospital a couple times. They may have made a number of threats, and they may have used a weapon or brandished a weapon or done something that might have been a crime or might not have been. And that builds on it. And then law enforcement makes an assessment. Yeah, this individual currently right now under the condition they're in, because we make observations and they testify to those observations based upon their skill, and then the court makes those determinations.
Well, I think we have a lot of great information and plenty to put together. I wasn't aware that you can be someone who's living with someone, not just a relative.
Well, because it's the people that have the most intimate knowledge of the individual who's sick. It's not somebody who lives down the street, or it's not a cousin that lives in Arizona. It's someone who's living with them around the clock and sees their behavior and sees that they are in harm's way. And that's really what this is about. And I've had lots of experience in this, and we've had lots of tragedies. That's why I support this, the ERPO.
Hey, Ash, what would you say to people who are afraid to report their relative, somebody they live with, who they care about? They're worried even maybe for their own safety. I mean, what would you say to them?
I think if you're worried for your own safety and then you're afraid, that answers the very first hurdle. Because I would ask, why are you afraid for your own safety? And they will always then come back and say, well, often when, and I'm just going to use this for this conversation, often when he drinks, he gets incredibly violent, he gets his guns out, he does this or that. Often when he gets this way, he is abusive to the animals, or he's abusive to me. Often when he gets this way, these things happen. Well, I always ask people, when you're afraid, the very next question anyone should ask them is why? Why are you afraid? And explain to me why you're afraid. And almost always they will start with a scenario, a story that tells the mental health breakdown of this individual, where it's clear that the individual is not capable of making good decisions for themselves and that they are at risk for themselves or others. And most of these people, they love that other person. They care for that other person, and it makes it very difficult. They're concerned about them. And this is not about a bad person. This is not a bad person bill. The ERPO is not for bad people. This is for mentally ill people who are not able to take care of themselves and that are a danger for themselves or others. I'm the first to say there are a lot of bad people out there that have done bad things. That's a totally different scenario. This is about, the loved ones that no one see and care about their family member or their partner, and they want to keep them alive. They know that the gun is an easy tool for them because they have participated in that. This is not an anti-gun bill, take away everyone guns. This is about an individual who is a danger to themselves or others. I know of a couple cases where people did not have any guns, didn't own any guns at all, and they were incredibly ill, and everyone knew that they were incredibly dangerous to themselves. No one knew or felt that they would commit homicide and suicide. They all just thought that they might commit suicide some way. But in turn, that's not what happened. They commit homicide on someone that's very close to them in the family, and then they turn the gun on themselves. That is a tragedy. That is something that we as Americans can stop. We can intervene, and we can save lives. And I can tell you right now that ERPO saves lives. There's proof of it today. And there's equally the same amount of proof that it is not being abused, and it's not a tool. I get very frustrated when it's a political issue. It's not that. This is about saving people's lives.
Thank you. So when the court says, yes, there's a mental illness issue here, who pays for the mental illness sessions? I mean, because that can be expensive, and not everybody can afford that.
That is right. And that's the big question that I always ask. I've said this before, so it's not the first time it's been heard by the public. Our state legislators have the responsibility to be looking at those kinds of issues. And we have, in the state of Colorado, we have created an epidemic of mental health issues in this state because we have opened up facilities. And there was a good reason to do that because some of them weren't being managed properly. But
mental health facilities, you mean?
Yeah, right.
Oh, okay.
Right. Mm-hmm. And in these cases, basically what happens is in the state of Colorado, they'll pay for your attorney to represent you in an ERPO. But what is not there right now is if you don't have insurance, where do you go to get care? Now, the important part is and there's a couple sheriffs in the state of Colorado, like myself, that we have resources that we can guide people to and help them get resources. And there are resources out there. It's not easy. It's difficult, but it's worth it to save someone's life. Not everyone has all the resources. Not everyone has insurance. So it's important when you do the ERPO, you look, okay, what are we going to do for this person? Now are they going to get care and treatment? And how do we help them with that? There are a lot of people say, well, that's not our responsibility. I think it is our responsibility. I argue that it is. Because if we're going to take the responsibility to say we think that you're ill and you're a danger to yourself or others, we should also take the responsibility to say, let's help you, let's guide you, let's get you to a place where you can now be a productive member of society and you're no longer a danger to yourself or others. So that is still a big hurdle. And that was argued in a couple of occasions. So, well, what are we going to do for mental health? Well, that's a huge topic in the state of Colorado. This is just one step of moving towards trying to save people's lives. We need to have a comprehensive mental health service in the state of Colorado that goes along with ERPO. Doesn't even have to be ERPO, it can be other things. We have a lot of other issues that we could be addressing. And so it is complicated and it is difficult. Who's going to pay for it? How does that get taken care of? And so I think those are some things that are worthy of further conversation. And I hope that the legislators take that to heart and they have that kind of conversation.
Yeah, there's definitely some more steps that need to be done here and fulfilled. It's all about getting the message out. How can we be positive? How can we make change and awareness?
Very good. Well, that's key. Awareness is so important because it's about awareness of your family member, your loved one, and understanding they're in a crisis. What can we do? And there's a lot of other things that can be done before the ERPO, but the ERPO is just one tool that if it gets dangerous, that's where they want to intervene with the ERPO. And then that gives them time because their loved one is still alive now. that gives them time to help them get care and treatment. And so they can become healthy again, and their relationships become healthy again, and they can come back and they can get their guns if they like to target shoot or whatever. I'm not.
Yeah. So, I mean, ERPO isn't that when you have an order, you don't take them to jail or anything, right? There's no ticket given to them.
That's right.
Okay. It's more of a warning, and then also being able to say your guns have to go elsewhere.
Right. And really what it is we're here to, once the order is given, we're here to protect you. Most always is from themselves because of their extreme risk and their mental health disorder. And now we want to get you healthy again. So you're not going to jail. You can pick any treatment facility you want. And then when you are healthy, you can come back to the court, petition it, and you can get your property back. And no one's opposing that, and that is one of the things I think that is so important about this, is that this is a tool. What we need is a pause button in their extreme mental health disorder. We need to be able to put a pause in it so they're not a danger to themselves, because you can't undo that. You can't pull that trigger.
Yeah. And sometimes mental health is something that kind of spins a little out of control, and the person doesn't know how to get that pause button.
Right. That's right. They don't know how to pause it. And then that goes beyond them. They can't see it. And then family members are concerned. Well, should I intervene? And I tell this to everyone. I said, listen, if you love them or you care for them, all right, and you see that they're about to hurt themselves and they were going to step off the curb in front of a bus, would you not grab them? Would you not pull them back? That's exactly what you're doing here. You're just taking that gun away from them for a short period of time so you can say, hey, you need some care and treatment. This is about saving them. We do it all the time. It's just people get worked up about the fact that we're going to take away a gun from them and protect them. We do it all the time from cars. We take cars away from people all the time when they can't drive right, or they're a danger to themselves. They can't see. This is like that. And I just encourage people that if you have someone in your life, or you know someone that's mentally ill, that is having extreme mental health issues, and you think that they're a danger to themselves or others, please act, please intervene, please call a professional for help, please call your local law enforcement agency and save a life.
Thank you so much. Very important message.
Well, I appreciate you doing this. It is important. And my wife said to me the other day, because I'm about ready to retire in about 2 years, less than that. And she goes, you're going to be remembered and you're going to be known for red flag. And I said, that's good. Then I'm successful in my life, because this is saving lives. I know it's saving lives because we're already intervening, and I'm okay if that's what I get known for. There's a lot of people that disagree, and that's okay. I am totally fine with this. I think this is very, very important, and it's the right step to help keep people alive.
And it's actually part of your job, and anyway, right, is to keep people safe.
It is, and I say that a lot to my other fellow sheriffs and chiefs of police and other law enforcement, is that we got into this job to help people. We got in this job to help prevent bad things from happening. And although it's very, very difficult to do in our world today, that doesn't mean you give up, and you continue to try to make a difference by doing that one thing. If you get a chance to save a life, you're not going to turn around and walk away from it. You embrace it. And that's what we're supposed to be doing as law enforcement officers.
Well, thank you again. I really appreciate all you're doing. My heart goes out to all the families that have been affected by all the gun shootings, that if we could even stop just one more, I mean, we've done a great job.
Right. I agree 100%. So thank you very much.